They got it from me, and I can't pass it.
That's what they thought this was from.
And they gave me, right,
People appreciate my
and I
jokes.
said, well, you know what, I'm gonna go to the dollar store and see if they have anything for anti-reflux, because all the ones, only the extra ones were just tearing me up. So I went to the dollar store and got some.
I said, she,
Well, the one doctor
use a
told me it
snow
takes a
blower,
while
it
for
should be
those
ready
to
to
kick
go.
in, like the Nexium and that, but
if
I
you
don't
need
have
me, I'm
it.
available.
Oh, yeah.
Well, my doctor had mentioned that I'm having the test of my whole chest and lungs with dye, a CAT scan on Friday. But the nurse actually said it because they kept hearing me cough when I was there.
Wow.
And they were
the
like,
next person came in,
when I first got there,
and
you
then I
sure you're
said,
not sick? And I said, no,
I
I'm
just told
this
you.
for 3 months and that. And when she was pushing me out, she said, you sure you don't have any long-term COVID cough?
I think I
And my
saw,
doctor said.
That's
he-
probably what it is. Because that affects so many people in
Well,
so
I
many
had so
different
much-
ways.
But I had so many reactions to every the pills, not the pills, the shot.
Yeah, that's,
oh,
yeah.
Actually, it's, what's his name, a wrestler,
yeah.
and Manchester, actually.
Yeah, I finally quit coughing from that, but
Is that Black Adam?
I still have breathing problems.
Look at a Disney Christmas
Can
movie.
you see this like that?
Yeah, it's a business.
Oh my God, why my foot so swollen?
After I got the boost in my arm, and my foot, and my
We
leg,
still have
arm
it.
swollen.
I think
Still
so.
partially swollen. This arm, I still have boost, and that's from the boost.
Oh, no. See, I did the first two and that was it.
Okay.
And I'm not going for no more, I don't care what they say.
Okay, so you watch.
You know,
I was gonna wait until everybody. Yeah, I know.
All right, if you won't come to me, I'll have to come to you.
I have a,
Well, I heard already. He's going to do the closing prayer tonight. So he knows. They've already talked. But anyway, we'll get started here in just a minute. You can share that. Girls coming over.
Here they come. Yay!
we're off to see the visitor.
it is, yeah, it's still kind of shocking.
Ready for a nap.
ABC warehouse.
Yeah, even the pictures even actually showed the little tool that they had in there, chopping all the stuff off. Yeah. They call it a chopper. It looks like it has teeth. Cool.
But you would help me out if you hand it out to everybody.
So what's your lesson gonna be on Saturday?
Jesus and the manger, and we need to grow. I guess you could say it that way. How about you?
I've done that one. I entitled that when I did it that way. I said, he ain't a baby anymore.
I might use that. I might use it. I like that.
Quit being a baby.
Time to grow up.
All right. It is time for us to get started, and I should mention real quick, happy first day of winter.
Yay!
Because it's gonna feel like it. Friday.
Although, I'm a little disappointed that everybody else is getting like 2 feet of snow and we're only getting 6 inches.
Depending on what.
It's gonna be a
month
mess.
you get.
It'll be a mess, whatever we get. But anyway, hope we have your cell phones charged, because they're talking about sporadic power outages
They
again.
are.
Oh, good Lord.
I got backup solar stuff. so
Well,
I'm
that's
good.
that's good. That's good. All
Any
right.
other good news you'd like to share? with us?
I do have some more, well, interesting news a little bit later, but Catherine, I think, has an announcement, or Chuck, or somebody over there.
I'm not sure if everyone already knows or not, but former member here, Lisa Burke, passed away.
Don Thornton's.
Yeah, Don Thornton's sister, Tuesday night. I don't know all the details, but she fell and I think hit her head, and her daughter helped her to bed, and then her son, by the time he got home, she was gone. So, Matt, her husband, passed away 4 years ago. So, just keep that family.
They still own the glass company up there.
Oh, yeah.
John R., yeah.
Yeah.
The kids, I don't know any arrangements, but they may end up using the building Monday and Tuesday. So I think they're talking to the funeral director tomorrow.
All right.
Matthew
Excuse me.
26.
was 26.
19 or 20.
So the mother is still alive. She's hoping that, and Dawn's really sick.
Yeah.
And then, now this one is gone.
Sad. So,
Very good.
Don, that's Ralph's wife?
Yeah.
Okay. Your ex-neighbor, huh? Wife.
Just shows life is short.
yeah.
Nita grew up right next door, seriously. The Thorntons.
Well, that wasn't good
So-
news either.
Now,
Did we
my
have
dad,
some good news? Oh, good news is the doctor says I'm healing up fine. I can walk on it, and I can slowly, gradually get back into the rhythm of what I was doing
that's
before.
good.
I'm good.
I think I didn't see it, but did you walk down the hall tonight
Yes, I
to get,
did.
you didn't use the wheelchair, so that's good, that's good. I kind of heard that, yeah, I kind of heard that she was
I'm
tired.
not paying attention.
Yeah,
There's got this storm coming in here, I need all the helpers I can get.
Got Rachel. I volunteered too, so.
funny. All right, so we
Get
should.
that one up in the attic out there doing it.
We should probably jump into this lesson, but we should have a little bit of a review. Now, I will say, what chapter are we in tonight? We're in chapter 12. This is the chapter we've all been excitingly looking forward to because there's
Not
lots
volunteering to read, I was just
of names. I hear lots of people volunteering to
I
read.
had it, it's nothing we haven't said before.
But let's have a little bit of a review before we jump into this. All right, so because chapter 12 kind of changes directions a little bit. So chapter 1, Joshua becomes the new leader, doesn't he? He takes over from Moses. He's going to lead that next generation of Israelites into the promised land. Chapter 2, the 2 spies were sent into what very important city?
Jericho.
All right, Jericho, thank you. Somebody's awake out there. All right, so the 2 spies came back, gave Joshua a good report. There was also a lady in the city of Jericho that was going to help them. All right, very good. Rahab. You don't want to see me struggling anymore, do you? All right, so chapters 3 and 4 was about the Israelites crossing over the Jordan River. Chapter 5, before they started this going in and conquering the land, they had to prepare themselves. So you had the second generation of males being circumcised. And then Joshua met a strange man who had a sword in his hand. See, well, I was going to ask a question. I was trying to formulate my words, but okay, there was that theophany. There was
Those
that.
are really gonna be a really long.
There was that physical. I'm just ignoring her. Just kidding. That physical manifestation of God that Joshua met with. Chapter 6 was the Battle of Jericho. Kind of an interesting, not your typical military style of war, because they were marching around the walls. Chapters 7 and 8 was the battle at Ai. Did things go well the first time they fought the people at Ai? No, not so much, right? Because
Got their hats handed to them.
what was that guy's name that took the accursed things? Achan, right? We should all remember that, right? Because
That's how you get that.
he was Achan because of that. So things didn't go well. Chapter 7, they tried again. They had a do-over, I guess you could say. Chapter 8, this time they were successful. Chapter 9, the Israelites were tricked, weren't they, into signing a peace treaty with the people of Gibeon. They were also, not only were they Gibeonites, but they were, what else? Hivites, all right. So those people became slaves, didn't they? They became slaves to Israel. They were the water carriers, and
Slaves.
they carried the wood. They had the lowliest of lowly jobs. Chapter 10, there were some kings that were really upset with the Gibeonite people because the Gibeonites had formed a peace treaty or an alliance with them, and because the Gibeonites broke that treaty, that alliance, if you will, those kings said, hey, we're going to go attack them. Gibeon was afraid, so they went and pleaded with the Israelites, and the Israelites took on the kings in that area, and they conquered them. There was a couple of miracles that took place in Joshua chapter 10.
Sun stood still and the moon stopped.
And the moon stopped, and then there was that hail that came down from the heavens. It killed more people than the Israelites killed, so pretty crazy hailstorm. And then chapter 11, this chapter opens with Israel conquering the land to the north. And then the chapter closes with a very brief summary of all the land that was conquered by Joshua. Now, chapter 12 is a summary of the kings that were conquered. And we're going to say that there's two natural divisions in this chapter. The kings conquered by Moses, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then the kings conquered by Joshua. There are names. There are lots of names, right? Names of kings, names of cities, names of areas. And just real quick, I was looking at Kaufman's commentary. It's pretty common, getting ready for class. And the question came up last week, how long did it take for Joshua and the Israelites to conquer all this land? And I said from the English Standard Version Study Bible, they said about 7 years. Kaufman, even in his commentary, said that this took about 7 years. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But before we get into the text, last week I did end class talking about a unique Bible. What makes it unique is not necessarily the translation. It's a King James Version, and I said I was going to have some photocopies of it. And then after class, we were talking a little bit about copyright. A couple of things that's interesting. In the United States, the King James Version is in the public domain. That's why almost all major book publishers, they just but they sell copies of the King James Version. It's really easy to get, print, sell. Over in Britain, though, the copyright belongs to the royalty, and I think it goes to the Cambridge University's printing house. So technically over in Europe, there's I just think that's interesting. Over in Europe, there's a copyright still on it. Here in the United States, we were, just because we're rebellious against the king and queen, we're like, no, that's in the public domain. I don't know, but this is King James Version, so I could have printed that off. However, this is called the Quick Scan Bible, and I was looking at its copyright. And so I don't have a copy of this because of the copyright. But you can look at it after class if you want to. They said, let me see if I find it here, no portion of the Holy Bible in Quick Scan, that would be this, may be reproduced in any form, printed, copied electronically, or in any other way without the express permission in writing of Microbooks, Inc., and then they have a couple names. It's not being published anymore, so me being able to, in a day or two that I had to get in touch with anybody to get rights to share this, I thought, I'm not going to share it. But again, you can look at it afterwards. So it's a quick scan of the text, okay? Now, there's even been some debates on differing Bible Facebook groups about, they're cutting out the words of God. I like to read a couple things from this. So they give a few pointers in reading the text. and why you would want to do it. They said it reduces reading time about 65%, while increasing understanding 34.8%. I thought that was kind of interesting. So you can scan through it a little bit quicker, but you're retaining some of the information. All right, so number one, they point out you read the words that are larger, bolder type. So you're only reading what they call the scan words. Number two, it's 2 columns, so you're not having to move your head so much. I don't know if anybody's noticed this today, but there are this is really big in the Bible world. I'm looking around, a lot of people have the 2 columns. Some Bibles today, a lot of the Bibles you can get today are 1 column. And so your eyes are going all the way across the page and your head's doing some moving. And they were trying to help prevent that. So you can just kind of scan through the column a little bit faster. It's a little bit of more of a speed read. And then the third point, because a lot of people are like, oh, they're cutting out words. The entire text is here. In the third point, they says, read the entire text as time permits. Every word of the original text is printed with a quick scan. You have everything offered in a traditional text, plus the exciting benefit of the quick scan for rapid review and greater understanding. So, important message to the readers. They say all scripture is given by the inspiration of God. So they're not eliminating any of the scriptures. It's just to try to help people to be able to read it a little bit quicker. So I could not, in good conscience, photocopy any of this, just because it says don't do it. So Brian thought, we're not using the King James anyway, we're using New King James. Brian thought, well, I will make a modified version of my own. Ladies, could you hand out there's a modified version. All right, so there's some bolden words. If you're following along, you're still going to be expected to read the whole text. So my plan for tonight was to not read all the names. Okay, I'll just read it all, but we're going to read the bolden words, but you will still be in your own personal studies expected to read all the names. And here's the funny thing from chapter 16, if you were to look at Joshua 16 in here, there's not a single bolden word.
That makes for an instant class.
I will modify it. I'll figure it out, but that's a few weeks out. All right, so it's kind of nice to have this so that, yours might look a little different because I got some notes on the back of mine. But we're just going to read the bolden things. Now, obviously, there's going to be some questions, right, that didn't come. That's random and weird. There you go. That was funny. All right, so everybody got a sheet? I mean, I've heard of what? So I don't know if anybody's watching, but if you're watching, I'm watching. Addison, are you watching? That's probably the two that are watching. So for future posterity, if you happen to watch this, what just happened was there was an orange bouncy ball that came boom, 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 my direction anyway. And I kicked it back. Pretty good anyway. All right, so
That's how you're supposed to read those.
it was a bouncy, follow the bouncy ball. All right, so typically what we've been doing is reading a section, right, and then going back and answering the question. And this is so short. This is going to take us probably a minute to read all this. It's not a long chapter anyway, right? 24 verses. This is going to be important because there's a chapter 14 or 15. It's like 63 verses long. So trust me, we don't want to be sitting here for 63 verses reading Hebrew name after Hebrew 15. Whew. All right, so anyway, but you will still be responsible for reading it on your own time, because there's going to be questions from those names. Okay.
We've already all read it all.
Well, that's great, but I'm just re-emphasizing. If you're watching this online and you're not reading it, you need to go back and reread it, all right? Because all of it's important. All right, so here we go. Joshua chapter 12. We're going to start in verse number 1. It says, "These are the kings of the land whom the children of Israel defeated, and whose land they possessed on the other side of the Jordan." And then it just begins listing them, doesn't it? And then verse number 6, "These Moses, the servant of the Lord, and the children of Israel had conquered, and Moses, the servant of the Lord, had given it as a possession." in verse number 7, and these are the kings of the country which Joshua and the children of Israel conquered on the side of the Jordan on the west. And again, here's a long list all the way down to verse 24. And the last part of verse 24 says, all the kings 31. Boy, that probably took us all of 30 seconds to read all that, didn't it? Now, y'all are probably going to want to go out and buy this quick scan. I don't know if you can
I already
probably...
wrote it down.
You might be able to find one on eBay or Amazon. I don't. All right, so let's go back and let's answer some of these questions. Now, it doesn't seem like there's very much material here, but if you spend a little bit of time, you could really dig into this. And there's actually there's a lot here. So, question number 1, chapter 12 begins talking about what kings?
Kings of the land whom the children of Israel defeated and whose land they possessed on the other side of the Jordan.
All right.
I said the kings conquered by Moses and the children of Israel.
Okay. Verses. All right.
And then if you drop down to verse 6, but you're going to answer that.
We'll answer that later. So that's why.
1 through 5.
So that's why I didn't put Moses in the first
Yeah.
question. But yep, the kings of the land of the children of Israel defeated in the land they possessed east of the Jordan River. So this section is a description. So verses 1 through 6 is a description of what's called the Transjordanian. That's the eastward conquest. But that was a different leader, wasn't it? We've already mentioned that. That's also an answer to one of the other questions. So did anybody ponder or think about why would Joshua include that here in this section? Why would he bring that up?
Because it's important to know that they defeated all of these people, and they're about to divide up all the land and tell you how they divided it all. So some of those lands are included in some of that.
Okay, very good.
And he would have been the general under Moses.
Okay. So and that was another point that Kaufman made at some point in this chapter. He's like, you think about all the geographical detail. Who better to write all that than Joshua? Because he was there. He was for all of this. Did the Jewish people have maps the way we do today?
No. It was maybe
No.
a drawing, like, hey, go over here. It didn't look anything like what we're used to.
Well,
Like Lord of the Rings.
Well, my understanding is the first map that was drawn didn't come to like the 11th century, and it was like drawn by a rabbi who actually used the book of Joshua to help trace some of this out. So, I mean, today we're spoiled, aren't we? You can just get a Google Maps and you can put any latitude and longitude and you can find any spot, right, on the planet. It's pretty amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. They didn't have that. So it's probably pretty important for them to describe their I heard a horn, but it could have been nobody's worried about it. So, all right, very good. So,
Besides, if they were one of us, we teach our kids that you got to knock on the door. Horn doesn't get nobody.
I think he was thinking.
I'm thinking of an alarm. So
It
here.
doesn't sound like an alarm.
It's probably John setting my door off again.
All right. So getting back to this. So we see some parallels, don't we, between Moses and Joshua? Moses was the leader, Joshua was the leader. And how about unity? That would show some unity for all of Israel, right? The tribes on the eastern side of the Jordan, they were just as much Israelites as those on the west. And they had to go in, didn't they, and help their brethren conquer that land. All right, question number 2. Who is the first king mentioned here, and what was he king of?
Sihon, king of the Amorites.
All right, verse.
See part A of question 1.
All right, verse 2. I'm ignoring John now. I don't know what he just said. So Sihon was the king of the Amorites. If you have a Bible that has cross references, does anybody have a cross reference to where you can read about this?
Is it Deuteronomy?
Maybe, but it's before Deuteronomy.
In Genesis 6:4.
No, it's after that.
Still Genesis.
No? All right. Well, how about if I give this to us? Maybe we can even read it since this is a little bit shorter. Numbers 21.
Oh, I have a Numbers 32 to 33.
Numbers 21. Verses 21 through 32.
21.
Yeah. Verses 21 through 32. And just for fun, you might want to put a bookmark here. Just for fun. So does somebody want to read that for us? If you're over there, Numbers 21 through 32. Because we're going to see Sihon, he didn't exactly want to let the Israelite people come through his land.
Do we want to do the bold words or?
Well, they're all bold in this section.
Number what?
Numbers 21, verses 21 through 32. And then you can put a bookmark there.
Then Israel sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites, saying, "Let me pass through your land. We will not turn aside into fields and vineyards. We will not drink water from wells. We will go by the king's highway until we have passed through your territory." But Sihon would not allow Israel to pass through his territory. So Sihon gathered all his people together and went out against Israel in the wilderness, and he came to Jahaz and fought against Israel. Then Israel defeated him with the edge of the sword and took possession of his land from the Arnon to the Jabbok, as far as the people of Ammon. For the border of the people of Ammon was fortified. So Israel took all these cities, and Israel dwelt in all the cities of the Amorites, in Heshbon and in all its villages. For Heshbon was the city of Sihon, king of the Amorites, who had fought against the former king of Moab, and had taken all his land from his hand, as far as the Arnon. Therefore those who speak in Proverbs say, "Come to Heshbon, let it be built, let the city of Sihon be repaired." For fire went out from Heshbon, a flame from the city of Sihon. It consumed Ar of Moab, the lords of the heights of the Arnon. Woe to you, Moab, you have perished. O people of Chemosh, he has given his sons as fugitives and his daughters into captivity, to Sihon, king of the Amorites. But we have shot at them. Heshbon has perished as far as Dibon. Then we laid waste as far as Nophah, which reaches to Medeba. Thus Israel dwelt in the land of the Amorites. Then Moses went to spy out Jazer, and they took its villages and drove out the Amorites who were there.
All right, excellent, very good. So Sihon refused to let the Israelites pass through the area. Israel promised, right? They said, we're not going to eat any of your food. We're not going to drink any of your water. They just wanted to get up there and get onto the king's highway and pass through the area. What happened to Sihon? They were destroyed. They were driven out. You can go to Bible.ca. They also have some good historical and geography of this time period. My understanding is that the Ammonites or the Amorites were driven south, which then would have pushed the Edomites further south, and so borders were changing there a little bit. So again, like I said, keep a bookmark here. We're going to probably jump back to this in just a couple minutes. But back here in Joshua 12 and verse number 3, there was a sea mentioned, a couple of seas mentioned, right? What was the first sea? The eastern Jordan plain from the Sea of... Okay, can anybody guess what the Sea of Chinneroth is? The Sea of Galilee, or some call it the lake. It was a really big lake. I'm going to have to do some research on that. I wonder how that compares to our Great Lakes. Anyway, the Sea of Galilee as far as the Sea of the Araba, which is...
The Salt Sea.
The Salt Sea. Yeah, the Salt Sea. It tells us, right? The Salt Sea was also known as the Dead Sea. All right, very good. Question number 3: who was the other king, and what was he king of? All right.
And he's mentioned in Numbers 21:33.
And that's why we kept a bookmark there, right? So if somebody wants to read that, we'll jump back to Numbers. See here, there's reasons for my madness. Numbers 21, the same chapter we were in, verses 33 through 35. If somebody wants to read that, please.
And they turned and went out by the way of Bashan. So Og, king of Bashan, went out against them, and all his people, to the battle at Edrei. The Lord said to Moses, do not fear him, for I have delivered him into your hand, with all his people and his land, and you shall do to him as you did to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who dwelt at Heshbon. So they defeated him, his sons, and all his people, until there was no survivor left, and they took possession of his land.
All right. So something to keep in mind about Og is he was a descendant of the giants.
What verse was that, or what passage?
This was Numbers 21, verses 31 through 35. All right, so we're going to jump back over to Joshua 12. Question number 4, what servant of the Lord and the children of Israel conquered these kings? Moses. All right, we've already answered that. Moses was a great man of faith, right? Which books of the Bible can you read about Moses? Did you say all of them?
All these other books
All
up here.
of them. All right. So,
Yeah.
well, Exodus going forward, right? He was born there in Exodus. I thought this was kind of interesting. In Hebrews chapter 11, Moses talks about how the great faith that Moses had. But do you know who else had great faith?
Joshua.
Well, in relation to Moses, how about his parents?
Oh, yeah.
In fact, the Hebrew writer talks about his parents and how they had great faith. And what did they do for Moses?
Saved his life.
Yeah, they put him in the little, I was going to say the ark. It was called the ark. It was that little basket. Some translations use the word ark. And put him in the river, and it saved his life. Yep, when Pharaoh was killing all the Hebrew baby boys.
And were willing to give him away.
They were willing to give him away, and they were willing to raise him, until he got to that age. What's that?
His mother ended up raising him.
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
But she
To
didn't know
a
at the
certain,
time. But I
to
mean,
a,
She
yeah.
didn't know. I mean,
Yeah.
she put him in
Yeah.
that basket thinking, I'm just going to send him away and then trust that God's
Yeah.
going to take care of
They
him.
didn't know how it was all going to play out, so they
Yeah.
had great faith. I thought that was neat. So that's Hebrews 11, verses 23 through 29. All right, so that brings us to the end of that first section dealing with Moses. Any thoughts, questions, comments? You guys reading through, did anything jump out at you guys? Did you find anything interesting?
A lot more interesting in the second half.
Okay, well, all right, okay, well, there's a lot of, there's a lot of information there. So this,
I like going and like as we're reading about the kings, I like going and trying to find them in the previous books. Like, where in this did they play? What region they're from and what was happening in those, because it kind of gives you a better understanding of. These were not just like, oh, we went and we conquered some lands.
Yep.
These were specific lands that they were conquering.
Yep. And later on, we can read city names and again kings. We've already read about a lot of these. I'm not going to say all of them because it's kind of a summary. But you're skimming through these names. You're looking at these names. And you're like, oh yeah, I recognize that name, and I recognize this name, and you put things together. And yeah, that's neat.
Interesting that this next section, it just lists who they were king of. Their name is not held in any glory. I mean, usually kings' names are in a tomb of glory, and this is like just the king of, and then their location.
So it's just kind of like a record. This is who they were.
And there's no glory there.
Yeah. So
That's because they were all scoundrels.
Right.
So the first section was dealing primarily with Moses. This last section is about Joshua. So this section could even be divided up into two sections. The first would be verses 9 through 16. You have the kings in the south are listed. And then you have the kings to the north listed last, verses 17 and following. And I thought this was kind of interesting. In Kaufman's commentary, he says, this is one long sentence. If you were to just look at it, it's just one long, I guess you could say a run-on sentence.
My English teacher would have a fit.
I'm sure a lot of English teachers would have fits looking at some of these Bible verses, especially in the original where there was no punctuation, at least in the Greek. All right, so question number 5. The remainder of this chapter reviews which kings?
The 31 listed.
The kings conquered by Joshua and the Israelites on this side of the Jordan.
All right, the kings
Oh,
which...
I actually listed them all.
I did too.
You did?
Yeah,
But
that's the one I
very
told,
beginning of
that's
that
the one
verse,
I told you I
verse
messed up.
Yeah, verse 7 actually specifically said that, so I just put
Which
that, but I-
kings? Yes, so, yeah, so,
But I highlighted them all.
Well, because
Yeah.
it said king of Jericho, king of Ai, king of,
well...
that's why I
Well,
listed.
good for you guys that did that. You get a special bonus, I guess. But the kings which Jordan and which Joshua and the children of Israel conquered on this side of the Jordan. All right. So we have. Let me look back here. In verse number 7, the first one that is listed is who?
King of Jericho.
Well.
Verse 7.
Verse 7, from,
Oh,
okay, Baal Gad. All right, so that would be the city to the far north or northwestern part of their territory. Just a quick fun fact, Baal Gad is translated as meaning the Lord of Fortune. Right, so Baal was a false god, if you remember your Old Testament studies, and this was a prominent place for a lot of Baal worship.
Translated what?
The Lord of Fortune. So you have Baal Gad, which is the far northern to northwestern point in this area, all the way down to the south, which would be Seir, S-E-I-R. Right, and he mentions that also in verse number 7. So all the way from Baal Gad all the way down to Seir. And Seir means hairy or shaggy. Hairy or shaggy. Can anybody guess who he was a descendant of?
Esau.
They were descendants of Esau. So they would have been the Edomites, and this was the land far to the south, down by the Dead Sea. All right, so question number 6. Joshua gave to the tribes of Israel this land as a what?
Possession according to their divisions.
Okay, possession according to their divisions. Verse 7. I put C. It's anyway, because there was a few answers right from verse 7. Division kind of reminds me of math. Am I any good at math? No, I'm not good at math.
It's simple math.
Simple math. Inside Facebook joke. All right. So ESV uses the word yes. There's a line in between. Anyway, the ESV uses allotment. So in other words, Joshua is giving that according to their tribes, right? I also had a corny joke. Let's see.
I welcome it.
I don't have it here. Where did I put
The
that?
bonus is the worst dad joke you've ever.
Oh, I love it.
Where did
I thought it was very
put
good
that?
myself.
I thought you did, you. Is that your corny joke?
No. I got it here somewhere.
Somewhere.
I don't know. I'll figure it out maybe. Anyway, question number 7. How is this land described?
Mountains, lowlands, plains, and slopes, wilderness.
Excellent.
Everything.
Verse 8. All right. So mountain area, ESV says hill country, lowlands. What do you think the lowlands would be referring to?
It says plains.
Like a valley.
Valleys.
Well, Well, lowlands would be land below sea level.
I was thinking swamp.
And where would the area around below sea level be? What sea's below sea level?
What sea? Oh, the Dead Sea.
The Dead Sea. All right, so it would be a reference to that. Then you have the Jordan Plain, right? So you think of does the United States have plains?
Yeah.
The Great
Yeah,
Sea.
yeah, the Great Plains. Sometimes you hear the High Plains.
Then you have the
What?
Everglades, which is swamps.
Yeah, I'm talking about plains right now. But the Everglades, yeah, you're thinking Florida. Plains typically get the snow, right? Why would the plains get the snow and the winds go in this direction? They're flatlands. If you've never been to northern Illinois and Iowa and Nebraska,
Iowa,
Kansas.
I mean, a tornado.
Iowa and a hurricane, that would be flatlands, relatively few trees.
Okay?
What's that, John?
The South Flat don't get a whole lot of snow.
Well, because that's deserty. I remember going out to college, and my dad was riding with me, and we're going out through Iowa and Nebraska, and he goes, "You really like this place?" I'm like, "Yeah, look at it. You can see everything from miles and miles away." Anyway, and then you have slopes. That would be the slopes off the mountains. You have the springs, and then you have wilderness. What do you think of when you think of wilderness?
Wooded areas. Yeah,
Thickly
forest,
dense
jungle,
forest and
animals.
lots of
creeping all
wild.
over.
So you name it, this territory had it, right? Question number 8. Which side was Ai, or which city was Ai beside? Verse 9. All right. See, there's even something interesting about this. The word Beth was not only a Hebrew letter, but it was a name. What does Beth mean? What?
One,
No.
that's all I see, Solomon.
I think Beth was 2. It was the second letter in the alphabet. You think of Psalm 119, that's the second section there. Beth means house. And so Beth El would be house of El, house of God. All right. So were there any other Beths in the Bible? Bethlehem. Do you know what Bethlehem, what that would mean? House of. Well, what is ham? Well, what is ham? Ham would be food. Actually, it's literally house of bread. House of bread. And do you remember who was born in Bethlehem?
No.
Who? It's on everybody's mind this time of year. I thought this was kind of fitting. Try, let's keep fishing. Jesus, and do you remember what Jesus said he was? He was the bread of life. John 8, verse 35. So we do have another Beth mentioned here in around this section. I don't remember what verse it was. You guys can scan through there. But we have Beth Jeshemoth, which would be the house of the deserts, or the house of the desolation. All right, so question number 9. Where was the king of Dor?
In the heights of Dor. This is really.
In the heights of
Although I
Dor.
don't think they meant heights like we mean heights.
Verse.
23.
So you got Madison Heights, you got Sterling Heights, you got Dor Heights. I don't know if that's why it was colloquially known. But this is interesting because I was looking up Dor, D-O-R. Today there's actually a place called Tel Dor National Park. And you can visit that area. And it's located on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea. So that'll give you an idea of where it's located on the far western side of the Promised Land. This place sits on a sandstone ridge about 46 feet overlooking the sea. And a couple of fun facts about this city is that because it was located in this particular region, it had some natural harbors coming into the city. So if you have a harbor coming into your city, guess what that's going to make you? It's going to make you a port. So that's going to be very important. And it was also located, what's that, John?
Make you a place of commerce.
It was a place of commerce, and it sat on a ancient trade route. It sat on a branch of this trade route called Via Maris, the Via Maris route. And so people wanted to control the city. You had this trade route going through it, and you had ocean travel coming into the city. So Phoenicians occupied the area. Phoenicians were well-known fishermen. And then later on, the Egyptians wanted this city. Phoenician blinds. Dad jokes. So the Egyptians wanted the city, so the Egyptians took it over. Philistines eventually took over the city. Israel took over the city. It was an important city. So question number 10: how many kings were defeated?
All the kings, 31.
Is that what you got, Harriet? 31? All right. Verse number. It answered it for us, right? So if you counted it, good for you. But you didn't even have to count it because the text gave us the answer. Everybody was giving me some feedback on this bonus question.
I laughed. I did.
Okay, I got to tell you that the hint was more for me than for anybody else because I kept going back trying to find the answer. I was like, I got to put a clue in there for me. All right, so where was the king of Jokneam located? And the hint was he was in a sticky situation. Carmel and Chewy. Yeah. Although it's spelled different than the food. Verse number
22.
Did anything else exciting happen at Mount Carmel?
The royal city of the king that was taken by Joshua and described as Carmel in the territory of Zebulun.
Do you know that region of the world was viewed as being a very holy and religious? Like, I think there was Egyptian, there's like ancient documents talking about the religious holiness to that city, or that area. There was a prophet of God that confronted some prophets here. Remember his name? Yep, Elijah confronted 450 prophets of Baal there. 1 Kings 18. And then there was also some false worship that took place there. So I found the other corny jokes. So yeah, very good. I'm glad you guys like that hint. Ha! So here's the other corny thing that I couldn't find. It was kind of buried in my notes here. So back in question number 5, the remainder of this chapter reviews which kings. It was the kings which Joshua and the children of Israel conquered on this side of the Jordan. Which side of the Jordan was that?
The right side.
Well, Moses was on the Transjordan, which was the east side.
So this is the west side.
Would be so you could literally say Joshua 12 verses 7 through 24. You're gonna love this. Is the west side story. But
Love it.
Don't print that for tomorrow.
you can use that as a sermon title, John, or anybody else. Anyway, I thought it was hilarious. On that note, before I get ran out of here, I'm going to stop with the corny jokes. Dad is bravely volunteered to lead us in a closing prayer tonight. Take it away, Dad.
Father in heaven, we're so thankful for your blessing us to this day, and thankful that we got to come to enjoy a great message tonight. Pray, Father, that much learning has come from this. Continue to bless all the sick who are not able to be with us, Father. Continue to bless Lisa Burke's family. We lost her yesterday. Pray, Father, that they will be comforted by you. Have the Father go with them. Now go with us, Father, as we go to our homes. All these we bless in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. All right. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Hope you all have a good night. And I will got it. Got that right. Thanks, Vera.
Go through and highlight. That'd be fun.
Yeah.